All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. Are we online?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, anyone? Is anyone in?
I'm not sure if anyone's there.
Okay. Hello, if anyone's there. My name is Maisie Adams. I'm the chair of the Landmark Commission. Just to set this up, we, like many of the city's departments, are looking at our ordinances and looking to improve them in a variety of different ways. And so we have been working on rewriting the landmark ordinance and are excited that we are continuing this process. So I am, without any further ado, going to hand it off to you guys to walk us through the most recent version.
Wonderful. So thank you for all of you who spent the time to read this through again and to make comments. All great feedback. What Diane and I really focused on this time was not only the comments portion of it, but to really focus on, let's say, cleaning the language up. You know, you all talked about consistency, trying to avoid redundancy, trying to be efficient in word usage. You know, we'll talk about capitalization of certain terms throughout the ordinance. You know, I think tonight we can kind of address that issue as we go through the comments. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Mm-hmm. Okay. So diving in, we'll just kind of start right in. Oh, my iPad's here. Okay.
We can move if you want to.
Yeah. Should we all do like a big shift? That would be.
I think she's still taking part. That's what right?
I'll just take it with me again.
I know.
There we go.
And I'll just sit with Diana. Well, why don't you sit closer?
Yeah.
That's it.
Someone else comes in later.
They're stuck.
Yeah.
That's cool. Right?
Yep. I'm gonna do much better now. All right. Now that we're all.
Oh my goodness. Oh, then it's much better.
I think I moved.
I did. I think my name is so.
Okay. Go closer. Keep going.
I'm sorry.
Those chairs are so comfy. Okay. All right. So now we got
Everyone's online.
So if you want to just kind of scroll down, some of the comments just in the title section of the ordinance related to what I was mentioning a moment ago, but capitalization and, you know, that kind of thing. There was a question about why minor changes was capitalized. Of course, in the beginning section, it's kind of like a table of contents. So these section, everything would be capitalized in that section to relate to whatever the heading is throughout the totality of the ordinance. So I just wanted to address that starting off.
Yes, we'll have to come back and we'll have to catch a few of these. It's like composition numbers.
Yeah.
So we'll catch those.
Yeah. So that's sort of a last run through that we do at the end, but good question on that. Moving to alternates, there was a question as to why do the alternates have the same powers and responsibilities as board members? They do. There's a qualification in the alternates section that talks about the alternates will serve whenever one or more members are unable to hear a particular matter or are unavailable. But the alternate members do possess the same qualifications and powers that regular members of the commission have. Did someone, Ken, did you?
Well,
Can I answer your question, or-
that's the qualifications, but I was also asking about the powers. In other words, that would why they come to every meeting. They don't.
Only when they're attending the meeting as in the role of a commission member do they have those powers. Some of those powers out on the street, they only have them when they are serving in place of one of the members that is missing.
Okay, well, that's yes.
A vote.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
They should have qualifications.
Yeah. So Historic districts deleted. The next question was related to why were historic districts deleted from the paragraph that talked about the purposes. So in the spirit of consistency and trying to use less language and concise throughout the totality of the ordinance, we defined landmarks in the definition section to include properties, landmark properties, and then property becomes a defined term that includes districts, buildings, sites, and objects. And what that does is it allows us to consider landmarks with one word and not have to go through the whole ordinance saying landmarks and landmark historic districts. We just talk about landmarks, and a historic district is a landmark. Does that answer that question? Okay, so that's what it's about. No, all questions are good
I
questions.
wasn't, but there are
Yeah.
other places historic landmarks are listed separately.
What we tried to clean that up so that it would be, when you're talking about landmarks, all landmarks, there's a section for it. There are specific areas where we talk about certain things we do only with historic districts. So there is a defined term, historic district, in there. When we go through the definitions, one of the things Diana and I were talking about is capitalizing these definitions. When you start to try to capitalize the verbs in these definitions, it doesn't work. You can't capitalize the word. Hello. It's all right. Hello. We can't really capitalize change in every section of the ordinance or alteration in every section of the ordinance. We thought perhaps landmark would make sense to capitalize throughout. But other than that, I think we're pretty much going to stay with lowercase throughout this. Because again, it raises the question, if you're capitalizing that term, why aren't you capitalizing that word? It's also a defined term. And you start to open up this can of worms.
Well, I like
Yeah.
landmark and landmarky. It's this kind.
Landmarking is not a defined term, though. We probably want to stay with landmark, the noun.
I mean, all right, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the way I think. When it's
Okay.
official landmark capitalized, it's just, this neighborhood has many landmarks. There should be a landmark, then I don't care.
Correct, right. Where we're using it like we would define the term. Yeah.
Okay.
There were some minor changes in here. Karen was, are you Karen? No, Katie, I'm sorry. Karen made comments, but I don't know who Karen is, so pardon me. Karen made a comment about the defined terms, again, being italicized in addition to the capitalization and to add further emphasis. This was who is Karen Lester?
Oh, Catherine Lester.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I guess in that case, I am Karen.
I am so sorry. Well, you're Karen tonight.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh,
that's-
Karen.
No. Oh, well, nice to see you. Okay. So you, again, had a question. There were several of you who, again, it was about this, what's getting capitalized, what isn't getting capitalized. Do you have any more comments on that? I don't know if you, okay, we discussed it a little bit.
Yeah.
As to how we were going to go. Okay. So do you go by Catherine?
Katie,
Katie.
typically.
All right, I'm writing that down because, as Diana knows, once I get something in my head,
It's really hard to
bad.
get.
It's really bad. There were some simple additions, alteration that Maisie added. I don't think that's a problem. If you continue to scroll down,
My only question on that one is.
Yeah.
I called out specifically adding an exterior, right? Can't remember if I.
yes, that was you, and the blue is the
But
changes
then
that.
do we are I cannot remember. Are we allowing ourselves the opportunity to call out specific interior features when we are creating a landmark? And then if so, did we mess up?
typically, we stay away from interior, if you have something to say, just.
No, I mean,
You're the one behind me, so I can't.
No, I mean, we have up there a little bit further. So it says changes to interior are considered alteration only to the extent that the future proposed to be changes were relevant in the initial landmark designation of the property. So if it was a part of the original designation, that's the exemption that we put in for that.
So leaving exterior in is okay.
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, just wanted
So
to.
like technically, it would be,
Just wanted to make sure.
left to exterior unless it was in the initial landmark designation.
Because we know you all have situations where you have designated portions of interior, so we couldn't take it out.
Correct.
So that's what that's about.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I just wanted to
No,
make sure
good.
we were still.
No, that's good, that's good. Where you see crossed out portions, the green was, remember that was what was in your original ordinance. We've crossed out, there wasn't any objection to any of that. Let's just go with the comments,
Okay.
because
Okay.
obviously everybody was in agreement on these, so.
Well, no, because we've changed some of those along the way since the last time they saw it. So like for this was just to make this more concise.
Right.
You know, one of the things that we took out is where it would say, but not limited to. Because otherwise we're saying that all of the time. Saying it includes does not mean it's an exhaustive list. So that's just.
We took out things like pursuant to section blah blah of the code. Or, what did you say, including or not, but not limited to.
Yeah.
Because it starts to get redundant and then you have to say it every time.
Mhm.
And it becomes a question of why are you saying it here and not here? And it's adding more words and we're trying to keep the words down on this and
Where
succinct.
did we have an interior portion of interior?
We're not gonna worry about that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
We do have an.
There is, because I recall it the design guidelines, but I can't, I wish I could tell you where it was.
We did something. Mark Apple's house. Those glass, those fire suppression falls, a couple things inside that house. And then over, okay.
Yeah, well, we were aware it was in there, so we've covered it, yeah.
We have
So-
done it.
So also you'll see in blue, you know, Diane and I see things as we go through each draft. So one of the things we added on historic significance, the blue is, remember this, the new things that were added since the last meeting. A period of significance, we added to historic significance because that's an important concept. We also made period of significance a defined term, so that when you all go forward in your landmarking properties, you are going to be including a period of significance, not just on a district, but on an individual landmark. Period of significance is very important. We've run into this in other communities that have not made that designation, and it's caused a problem, especially with districts.
Here's a question. I don't, I know on my comments on this, I asked about the definition.
Oh, yeah, let's back up. We must, I'm sorry, we must have missed that
Because I
comment.
feel like we do have properties that are designated that do not.
So where economic feasibility is different than economic hardship, of course. Economic feasibility comes into play with your new demolition ordinance that allows you to absolutely deny a demolition. And part of that termination is economic feasibility. Is it feasible to rehabilitate this property using Secretary of Interior standards? It may not be the project that the owner or the developer wants, but is there a path to getting a rehabilitation done that is economically feasible? So you have to have a definition of how do you define economic feasibility. In order to define that, you have to look at the market around that particular piece of property. Because in Cleveland Heights, for example, properties on Fairmount Boulevard are very different than the properties in like the Inglewood Historic District. So you can't just say the market rate for all of Cleveland Heights. So what they do is they do a study, you have a realtor, a specialist come in who comes up with comparable market rate properties. And so that's what that economic feasibility determination is defined for. Economic hardship, of course, you have a whole section on that. which is different. So it's not about isolating certain areas. Was the question about? this
I
looks
have
like we're-
concerns about the definition because I feel like we do have properties that are designated, that could easily meet this definition and that it's an excuse then for it to not.
You
Like, I'm-
want it to be economically feasible.
I'm concerned that, right, that
We have landmarks that don't have financial significant, any financial. I mean, I'm thinking of like the
I'm
White
thinking,
House.
exactly.
Which is, yeah.
Well, then you're
But I
kind of
don't
in a
want-
bind because with takings laws would require you not to force somebody to rehab a property in a manner that was not economically feasible. That's what you're running up against is takings and property rights and why that definition is in place. So let's walk through an example. So you have a piece of property that's in an area of town that has nothing around it that allows you to
Probably
do comps, that you can do
Probably very
comparables.
underwater.
Okay, so don't think about the property in its current condition.
Okay.
What you're doing, it's like, you're doing comps. So you're saying this house of this size with this square footage. And if there's not another house like it in that neighborhood, then you have to go to the next closest neighborhood. So that's how a real estate agent decides the value of a piece of property.
So say, what would you say, like $100,000?
Yeah, let's say
Would be-
it's valued at
Just do $100,000 as a
And let's
comparable
say it
price.
needs a new roof and a whole bunch of siding repair, wood.
Right, so let's say
We're
that
getting to the
so
point
that's-
of repairs.
That's different. This only comes up with a demolition situation.
Okay,
Yes.
so definition does not apply to repairs or
No.
restoration.
No.
So what would happen is, in this scenario, if someone's come in for a demo, the fair market value of that property is $100,000. To rehabilitate it, it's $150,000. And they're telling you they cannot rehabilitate it and still occupy the building for $250,000. But they can demolish it and build a $500,000 building.
But what
So
about,
it is
can they just
economically feasible.
demolish it and not, like, can they say, well, we can't invest $200,000 in this house, but we can take it down for 75, so is that feasible for us to take it down? I mean, is that,
So you bring experts in and they come up with the whole comps for what this house could possibly sell for.
It's not whether or not they can the market?
Can the market do it? It's not the project with whatever they want. Is there a path to rehabilitating this piece of property within whatever the market rate is for a comparable property in Cleveland Heights?
Right, but if the house next door is only worth 100,000, then they have the opportunity to tear it down?
Yes.
that's.
And
what
that's
makes
where you
me-
run up against constitutional law. That's a takings thing. And
But
you
I
pro-
feel like then shouldn't they just be proving economic hardship and then that's their path? Because what if you have,
Well, they're gonna come to you with economic hardship, and then you are going to prove that it's economically feasible. So the city would do the exercise of having a real estate agent come in and say it's economically feasible. So I think one of the questions I think we probably wanna know is, when a building is demolished, are they allowed to demolish and put it back to land?
because if you have someone that owns this and they have the capacity to do the renovation, financially, but they can just take the market value and show that what they.
It's not what they have, correct. You can't impose that on them just because you would have a individual with means come in. You can't impose that on them. This is only in a demolition. So the other side of this is then also you have an expert come in and testify that there is a path to rehabilitation for X amount of dollars. This is only in a demo. If you're in a repair situation, economic feasibility does come in.
Just as far as, let's say it's slate roof and you're gonna allow a non-slate product. That's where economic feasibility comes in for repair. or you're allowing an alternative because it's not economically feasible to use whatever was on the building originally.
So do we need to put something in here that this study is specifically for demolitions and that they also have to prove economic hardship?
No, they do not have to prove economic hardship if it's not related to demolition. Economic feasibility, I think this definition works as well for repair. Because you can't make somebody do a repair if they can prove that it's, I mean, that's right in the standards, if it's not economically feasible. Not based on what their means are, but based on, they can prove that that slate roof is going to cost.
$150 more per square foot than the shingle, which is $3 a square foot. That's not economically feasible. So that's where repair and economic. So when you are applying the standards, you're always taking in technical and economic feasibility. You should always be taking in technical and economic feasibility. So let's just say there was Brazilian wood, and Brazilian wood doesn't exist, or ash. Okay, it was made of ash, and ash doesn't exist anymore. It's not technically feasible to use ash because it's not available on the market anymore. Or let's say it's lead paint. We obviously don't encourage people to use lead paint. So that's where technical comes in when you're applying the standards, as well as economic feasibility when you're applying the standards for repair. So I think what she's asking is, can we put some kind of clarification in here that this economic feasibility applies to repair and demolition versus hardship? Because I think that's where there's confusion between what's economically feasible versus what's a hardship.
When hardship comes.
They may both come into play.
Right.
They may both
In
come into
demolition.
play, and so I don't think I can separate those out. I mean,
So why do we not, are we defining economic hardship?
I know,
Yeah,
I was
there's a
thinking the
whole-
same thing.
yeah, there's a whole
It's a
ordinance
part of the
section.
ordinance, because it's not a definition, it's a section of the ordinance.
Which is
Okay.
143.105.
143.
105.105. Yeah.
Oh, we don't have it on the screen. That's not one.
Oh, it's a separate.
Yeah, it's a separate. It's in the
Oh,
city.
there it is.
No, it's in there.
Page 15.
Yeah, it's in here. I know it's in here. Scrolling way down. 143.105. Keep going.
Oh,
It's way down.
sorry, I'm going as fast as that. It's not me going slow. This is
We were just talking about that.
It's
It's
like
like
the speed of this
speed.
mouse.
Yeah.
I think
Right past it.
the concern that I would have,
No.
It's 105, it's like 10.5. There it is. Up, up, up. That's all part of it. This is all, yeah.
so I think the concern that I have, which is,
Yes.
Our goal is to make demolition as difficult. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're using the Willard Wright House, which is the house across the street from the whole library and the whole school, it's not in great shape. It's been empty for quite some time. There were unhappy circumstances with the last owner. I would worry that someone would come in to buy it specifically to church. And they would be able to easily do that because it is not in a strong real estate area.
And this is where I want to, we should put this down for discussion with the law director, because you may not be able to do anything about that based on takings laws, constitutional laws. Takings without justification. So let's mark that down for discussion with the law director,
And I think
because I think it's really important.
helpful to know how someone like Cleveland deals with it. I assume they have landmarks in very difficult financial.
But
So they usually do require that the building is beyond reasonable repair. Right. So it's not just, the building is in bad shape and you can't, like you're saying, it's in a market that they can't get a higher price for it. Usually has to be beyond reasonable repair as well.
But in Cleveland, you can't stop a demolition code. You can pause it, but you can't. What this does is gives you a path to completely deny demolition. And many communities do not have that. I only know one community that has it.
The other thing that Cleveland does do is that they will not grant demolition without a plan for the property. So that means you can't just demolish it and leave it vacant and then sell the property. You have to have plans for construction.
Right, and do we have that?
Yes.
Yeah, we put
So
that in, right?
let's, yeah, that's in the section under demolition. And Ken had a really good question, and this was my other question for the law director is if landmarks, who's making the final approval of plans? So you get through your whole demolition process, okay? And then the ordinance requires that as the last step, okay, you have to have final approval of plans that are for the building that's going to go on the property after the demolition. And I lost my train of thought. The plan, who has the power, right, to do that? And what's interesting with an individual landmark, once that individual landmark goes down, you guys really don't have authority on that property. But you can say final approval by the Architecture Review Board, Architecture Board of Review, I never know which way that's going to go. And that's one of the questions I had for the law director. With a historic district, it's not a problem. The landmarks can do the final approval of the building because you've got buildings in proximity, you're operating in a historic district. But if you have a standalone landmark and that goes down, landmarks really doesn't have purview over final approval of drawings for new construction when there's no other historic structures around. And that was a question I wanted to ask the law director.
Okay, so I think we need to, yeah. And are your comments reflected in here? Did you
I don't
guys
think
receive
so.
Margaret's comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, they're
Just wanted to
in
make
here.
sure,
We're
because
just
I-
kind of jumping around a
No,
little bit.
no, that's fine.
They're
I
all,
just didn't see your name anywhere. So.
well, it says Wendy in here because I transcribed them from each person's. So Karen, Katie, Margaret, who knows what I named you? Let's
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that they
Yeah, so
You-
let's go
you
back up
received
because
that.
we kind of jumped around a little
Yeah, we
bit.
left off economic feasibility.
Economic feasibility, so.
Okay, so we just
we
want to
can
make sure
ask.
that we're going to have a further conversation around that
Yes,
whole economic hardship, economic feasibility, particularly in relationship to demolition, and approval of future plans. I mean, future plans have to actually be plans.
it's final approval.
Yeah, but they're.
Yeah,
and the other
Not
Yeah,
preliminary,
it's not
so-
just.
The other
Yeah.
thing Cleveland does is that once you can't demo the building, they can do this, they don't always do it, but sometimes they will not allow the demolition to occur until they have the building permit for the construction.
And if that's in there, I put a
Which
delay.
means they
in
gotta
there.
spend money
Right.
on drawings and going through that process and paying for a permit before they tear the building down. So they're vested.
Right.
And
Pretty
we
strong.
can't just say we're tearing this down, then we're gonna start fundraising
Yeah,
for
yeah.
it.
That process is for landmarks or.
Yes.
And there was also a question about whether we felt this could apply to buildings in proximity of a landmark, saving them from being demoed. I'd ask the law director, but my reaction is no.
Yeah, I would.
Okay. I didn't know if there were any more. We kind of touched on that, and I didn't know if there were any questions on that. Okay, so historic significance. We were cleaning up definitions through here.
And just so you know, these, we didn't add like letters and numbers back yet because we still moving.
Okay, there's Katie. Proximity for reasons we talked about at meeting. Okay, everybody was on board with the proximity term, language being added. And we did put that in throughout the document. So buildings within proximity of the historic district come into play. Everybody's on board with that, right? Okay.
Here's Margaret's.
Oh, okay. The painting clause.
There you are.
Diane and I sat and talked about this, and we find in many communities, painting is a big deal.
People get
People
very
get-
nervous.
been out of shape about, can you tell me what to paint, do I have to talk to you about what to paint my house or not? And we thought maybe you want to leave it in there for that reason, to be really clear about it.
I mean, normally you don't have to say all the things you don't do, right?
Right.
But this is one thing that people are very passionate about, and it's like their favorite thing to say. Oh, those landmark people love to tell you how to paint your house, what color your door is. So we just felt like, as much as it's unnecessary language, at least it's in black and white. So if someone is going about saying such things or having such fears, no, it's in the.
Is it the painting of properties or is it the color
Of any.
of,
Of any.
is it the color? I'm saying the process of painting could potentially finish.
Okay,
okay.
That's
if you're painting
brick.
So,
if you're painting brick.
Yeah, that would be my concern, basically.
So it's paint color that we're
Yes.
saying.
paint color.
Yes.
Oh, that's a good clarification, yeah.
And paint of an existing painted surface, not like
Yes.
painting over.
But you're saying.
We don't want painting of brick. We
No.
don't want-
No.
It's-
Right, so I
it's
think
actually
that means if we're gonna keep this
So we
in
want
here,
the paint color.
it's paint
Right.
color and it's only paint. I would want to review anything that's being painted that's not.
Yeah, I think
Well, then we'll
Lakewood
stucco
added
too,
to
though.
the, to the ordinance after Main Halls got painted.
Okay, I'll check the liquid
We don't
ordinance.
want them to paint stone or brick unless, there are some houses that.
That's submitted
originally
previously.
painted brick.
Yes,
And
yeah.
also stucco, most of the houses paint stucco with their original stain. That's the most of all.
Yes. Yeah, and stucco typically was stained as part of the stucco process, so it is very
You
hard.
see little pebbles.
Yeah, it's very hard to reproduce that. That is very hard if you're repairing.
No, that's a really good point. If we
Yeah.
do color, that allows you to still get in up in there with all the, somebody wants to come in and paint the masonry or,
But I think we should also say that
Yes, we will. We'll look at how Lakewood.
I'll look at the Lakewood
And then-
ordinance for that.
because we want to stop the scourge of painted brick.
Good luck. Much paint.
Some of it, there's going to be some that just kind of happens in the dark at night.
Oh,
Okay, so, done. We had Maisie, okay, seems vague. Criteria for designation and determining whether or not to recommend a property. The commission shall consider the following criteria with respect to historic significance. So, yeah, at first glance, it appears vague, but we beefed it up by defining property. So in determining whether or not to recommend designation for properties now defined to include district, site, building, structure, work of art, the commission shall consider the following criteria with respect to historic significance. Historic significance is a
it's
defined
not
term.
the property part that I think is vague. It's the shall consider that I think is vague.
Determining whether or not to recommend.
Commission,
Oh, I
commission
see.
shall consider the following criteria. Shouldn't we actually have it meet one of the criteria? At least, right?
Well, I think what it's saying is these are all the things you take into consideration.
Because when you're writing your landmark, you're going to have your statement of significance
in your period of-
and your period of significance.
So these are all the different things that you're taking into consideration.
This is what's in the, let me check that. I think that's in the ordinance now. If you want to make,
I'm just saying that. It seems to me that a landmark has to have
Meet at least
met
one
one of
of
those,
these. Yeah.
right? But is that maybe in
We
the
could-
definition of land?
we could say that. I can just add and say,
You mean must meet.
I mean,
instead of
what we do have is what it has to meet is historic significance. So that's the clarification, is that it must meet historic significance, and then the definition of historic significance adds another layer to it. So these are all the things you're taking into consideration when you're looking at it, but it's meeting one of those 4 criteria of historic.
It doesn't say it's.
Yeah, so it says with respect,
to,
following criteria with respect to historic significance.
so scroll back up
So
to
you-
historic.
Commission shall consider.
So I think
the
she's
following.
more, Maisie, am I hearing you right? You're more concerned with the vagueness of like respect and shall. You want something more definitive.
But I don't know if I need something more definitive. It seems sort of wishy-washy.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know if
Yeah,
it's wishy-washy for a reason or. I don't-
shall follow. Wait,
No,
shall,
to me, it should
Follow
be,
the-
it should meet one of these
okay,
criteria,
we can do that. Yes.
but I don't know.
I think it would be following criteria, meeting one of the criteria for historic.
Yes. Okay, we'll look at that.
I mean, we are not gonna landmark something that does not hit
Correct.
Right.
one of those.
And then we've added historic significance to that. So if you scroll back to that definition or read it up there and the other, we brought in the criteria, the National Register criteria
For historic
to
significance.
kind of, we're trying to make an effort to keep you all
Right.
within the bounds of accepted practices.
Correct.
Right. So here, historic significance, if you're familiar with National Register criteria, that's basically A, B, and C. Criterion A, B, and C. Right. Okay, thank you. All great questions. Ken, should village or city of Cleveland, we stuck with city because city of Cleveland Heights is what the designation, classification for now, which includes the history of the city from the village and from before it was a village to current
Oh, those
day.
I think you went from prehistoric to city. And it was a village.
The
So I-
heritage,
So I said village forces.
Yeah, on number K.
can you go down?
Letter K. What you've added under.
Oh, I
143.
see. Well, that's actually criterion D of the National Register where I'm trying to, you never know, somebody might find like a mound in the backyard. I don't know.
Well, I think it's not prehistory,
Or
There's a
history
village in
of
there.
the village.
right, but it's the so prehistory is Native Americans.
Right.
History is white people and stuff,
Right.
right? So that includes the history of the city of Cleveland Heights, which was also when it was a village.
Yeah, so today it's the city of Cleveland Heights, so it's the history of the city of Cleveland.
Prehistory.
So prehistory is.
I guess, yeah, as a city that is part of the history, it's supposed to get kind of about village houses. There's 4 townships before that. Too.
Yeah, that's too much.
Like the one
Yeah,
they were called Cleveland Heights. Though.
Yeah, and the ordinance, when you get into the ordinance, you really try to keep it,
Right. precise.
yeah.
So I think we're okay because the history of the city includes all that stuff.
Did we add to the significant statement the archaeology and significance?
I'll check.
Well, I know we don't have it in there now, but I'm putting that as a note. We might add the archaeology to the historic significance as a full.
Why you would nominate it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Karen was saying.
Karen.
Oh, I'm really embarrassed about that. I apologize.
Wow.
Could be related to proximity. Okay, that was just a question. We just decided to get that out of there because nobody was sure what that meant. Okay,
Yeah.
moving on.
And we agree.
And we agree,
I like it.
we agree. I don't want to belabor the points. Okay. Maisie, council should adopt the okay. So this is the part about designation and owner consent. So, let me make sure I get all the comments out. Adopt a resolution to designate landmark should propose designation. Maisie's saying should we, and this is also related to owner consent. So we took a look at ordinances in the city of Cleveland, Shaker Heights, Hudson, and North Olmsted, because we've done some work in North Olmsted, and they have a CLG, and they've recently done an ordinance. And City of Cleveland and Shaker Heights have an almost identical owner consent ordinance, which may be a good compromise for you all, because it basically says, we'll give it a solid try to get a hold of that owner. But if we can't get ahead of the owner, or the owner just doesn't consent, we can still go ahead and designate, as long as they have notice and opportunity to be heard. So you may have to listen to somebody, but you don't, it's up to you all to make the designation. And we thought this was a great compromise for council and others that want to make sure that owner gets notice.
Right.
But it allows you to keep the control of the designation. We also,
So Shaker and Cleveland designate on the landmark commission designates and Shaker?
no, I'm just on owner consent, then we're going to move to landmark designation.
Well, so the owner consent part, I think, in way back ago conversations, the idea was that if council is the one who actually does the landmarking, right? We propose it and then they vote on it. One of the reasons we would do that aside from legal right was that it would be easier for us to remove the
So
owner
let's talk
consent
about,
portion,
yes, that was going to be our balancing act.
because it would be more.
But we felt this owner consent, if you made a valiant effort, got the person in the room and it could say that City of Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights is doing us, that would be good.
Because it may
as
be,
far-
maybe a matter
Yeah.
of ignorance, that they don't know what it means to be a landmark, so it gives you guys an opportunity. And Maisie, you're very good.
You are
Very
really,
good.
this board is outstanding. I have to tell you, all you guys are just amazing.
So they know that they can paint the color of their door, whatever.
So let's talk about who makes the designation.
So this blue part is you've added in.
Yes.
Since, okay.
So let's talk about the designation for a minute, because Diana and I started to talk about it, and I have seen this, where you pass a designation along to council or to another level. They do not have the qualifications to be making that determination. It becomes perhaps political.
Right, I mean, that's.
You all have the qualifications, you have the authority now. It
You've had
seems to
it
be
for 50
working.
years.
I would not give that, I think it will complicate the system. And then when you remove, that goes to your question, removal, whoever does the designation, yes, would do the removal.
So your suggestion is adding in this
Yes.
language which
So I can
gives
see-
us a path to go over to not have owner consent. This language here.
Yes, because
Gives us a path, there's steps
Yes.
and everything, but there is a path for landmarking without owner consent.
yes,
But you are recommending that it stays, the designation power stays with landmark.
You are the body that is qualified to determine whether a building should be landmarked.
because I'm seeing in other communities where, and it comes up on an appeal too. I'm going to talk about the same thing on appeal. What body do you appeal to that has the knowledge about landmarks? That's based on when you're in a certificate of appropriate situation, but you get into that same, and I've seen it, and it's so frustrating. Especially as you sit here as a board and all, the rules and regulations about National Register and all this criteria, and, we've really worked hard on the design guidelines. And then you get a board, and I've not seen it, where they come in and you're like, for whatever reason, they just say no. So something to think about, but you're very, we've spent a lot of time trying to get control, you guys to get control over landmark and how do we do this without owner consent and to give that away is something to think
Well,
about.
and I think I don't know if your all memories are the same as mine, but I think the discussion about putting the power of council was around that.
Yeah.
So if there is a path where we can deal with that,
And this
I
will be
don't
part of,
know that it's a problem then, that it stays with us.
Because let's just say you've given an owner an opportunity, they've come, they've given you reasonable reasons for you all to go, okay, yeah, maybe won't. And to be honest, if someone's really screaming and yelling, you're probably gonna go, you know what, we're gonna back off, we'll try it in 5 years. If they're doing it because they want to tear the building down, that will be evident. And so sometimes the social world will take care of some of those problems all on their own.
They'll usually do it because they don't want
Oh.
to. You have to go through it.
So,
Right, and and that's where you get to educate them on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. You know, talking about maintaining the value of the property they're investing in.
Right.
So it gives you an opportunity to disarm any concerns that they have.
It was one of several sticking points with city council. Yes. So we lost it. Originally, we had, it had, I'm talking about the other 5
Yeah.
years.
2019, yeah. Okay, I mean, I think it's
We
great
will
to
write that.
keep us with the power, but we, I think, just want to make sure that passes the,
We're going to put that memo together
right,
with the law director, wherever our next step goes, that talks about City of Cleveland, City of Shaker Heights are doing this. Not the designation part, but the owner consent part, okay?
Okay.
But we all have always done this, where we
we're
have
not even
been,
going to address
so why
changing.
would you pick that up? And we spent some time kind of talking through scenarios. Another thing I added, which I loved, is City of Cincinnati was reading their demolition ordinance. And they put in, and we've added it to this, that there's no demolition during a pending landmark application,
Yes.
which is amazing because we had talked about a moratorium as we're doing this, but that carries you forward where you kind of hear,
Right.
and you get a landmark application going. And it has to be a complete application, so it's not fair for somebody that you just.
Run it out quick.
So, it's a fairness thing with folks and, reasonable thing. But we felt that was another way of trying to protect these properties from
Okay.
that as well.
So what we're doing, and just making sure I'm fully
Yes.
understanding, we are removing, these two things are separate. So the owner consent issue is dealt with here.
Yes.
This is added language. We are gonna leave the final say on designation with the commission.
That would be our recommendation after we spent some time trying to come up with scenarios and things we've seen.
Oh,
And
yeah, I mean, I
it
think
gets
that
out of
made
your
us all
hands and
nervous.
it's, yeah.
Yeah.
And I tell you.
But you are the qualifying body to make those
I mean, there's a
determinations.
reason they put us on the board.
That's right.
So because we-
It's those qualifications.
Yes.
I mean, it's similar to, the health board, right?
Yeah.
Council shouldn't be making decisions for them.
Is that another discussion for another day? Okay, so I want to make sure, I think we addressed all those comments, right? Yes, that was owner.
Okay.
Katie has some questions in there. Okay. Katie, just,
This was more for Eric and so we had talked about it at the last meeting.
I think it's really important. It's an in-house system,
Yeah.
right, on how proximity related to. So a house comes in, does anybody even know that it's in proximity to a landmark? So it's gonna have to be processed
I think
in-house.
you were saying, Katie, that you were just reminding us that we should write an entrance.
Yeah, basically.
Photograph everything.
But also the process is really important because,
Yeah, make sure.
on ABR, if someone comes in, I'm not gonna know if it's in proximity
There
to
has to
live.
be, there has to be a way to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's been an issue that we've had where in the past, projects have been on landmark properties that have gone.
One of the ways that can be handled, which I don't know how the city would fund it, is a simple mapping tool. Cleveland has it, Cincinnati has it, Columbus, I mean, I know we're not at that size, but there's a map. And you go to it and you
They
click
were
on.
trying to do a GIS. Whatever.
I think we're in the process, like,
So it should include landmark properties,
Yeah.
and so when the building permit gets, slapped on the desk, it's checked really quick again. That should just be a part of the building permit process. So,
And that has been, I mean, in the way it has happened in the past is there's literally landmarks,
Right.
and then anything that goes before building, they're supposed to look at this, but then all hinges on some guy in the building.
so it needs to be on the form that was checked.
I don't know what kind of budget or whatever this would take, but I was thinking like if there was a digital system where all the addresses were logged, it would, an attachment to the address would say, this is landmark, and then you could flag all of the ones that are around it. So
Am I,
that when you apply, because now we have the digital application online, so when you go through that, it would flag it and say, this is a landmark property. Or,
This is next to a landmark
Yeah.
property.
yeah. And that's all
That would
that
be the ideal.
I don't know.
I'm seeing in my head kind of a basic map. Isn't there a basic map with the landmarks on it? I'm kind of seeing a
There is a
landmark.
map, and there is a list, but the tagging of it
Oh, but translating the address of what's coming in.
is based on human.
Okay, so they have to add that in their steps. Check to see if proximity.
So then what happened in the past is that sometimes would slip through a building department and
Then once it's done,
right, or it gets picked up late or whatever. So, anyway.
meaning deadline for review that will take into consideration the findings of LCMPC as well as any public comment. There was some,
That was only if we were having council.
oh, okay, that's what that's about. All right, so, all right, yes, council should.
About
Okay,
So
So that's,
around that.
okay, we've moved on, we've already.
because we're removing that.
Okay. With removal power, see, I don't think sure. Strong station here, only rescind, no, okay, we talked about that. Katie, did we discuss where appropriate reasons for removal? Yes, those were down a little bit. Removal, landmark I'm sorry, Diane, I told you. Landmark status for property that has ceased to meet the criteria for designation and the qualities for which it was originally designated have been lost or destroyed. So I added that language to really clarify why a property would be removed. Oh, we added that with blue.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
No, that was good, yeah. Regulation of property. Every time you see property in blue, it's us replacing it with the verbiage that was there before, so. Hey, the owner question, I know the answer to if they are eligible to apply, but the wording is, it says that none of the party can change. Oh, never mind. We're just gonna leave that language the way it was. Right, yes, thank you.
Sorry, all my comments are really long.
No,
I
It's okay. No, it's all good. It's all good. I really appreciate the time everyone took to look at this. We really do. Endeavor, this was the joint meeting of the Landmark Commission and Architectural Board of Review. Instead of making every effort, we're going to endeavor. I like that language. Whoever came up with that, you. So we're, Katie, shall endeavor.
Top right here, Daisy.
Page 14.
Did you get Ken's note back up a little bit?
The color thing.
The color.
Oh, I'm sorry, can you go
Did that
up?
get
Yes, I
figured?
pulled
I just wanted to
that
make
out.
sure.
Color
She
was not,
removed it.
yeah. Can you go back up, Diana?
It's not exactly dangerous.
Color, yes.
So
I'm
it's
like,
going to be removed.
yes, that's gone.
Okay,
That's gone.
just wanted to
That
make
was
sure.
in there. I'm like, yeah, right. Color, I don't know. Who knows? Action by the
The heat of
landlord
the moment,
commission.
you put
Okay,
color.
hold on, did we read that? In line with the property elsewhere, yes. I thought at our meeting last week, we agreed this, this is the joint meeting. Okay, Endeavor, Maisie, I think an appeal process, yes, we put an appeal process in farther along. Okay, so here we are at demolition and moving. This was language that we put in before. Ken had a comment, I don't understand the wording stating that no permit to demolish will be approved unless Landmark Commission approves. That was the point we talked about that we're going to consult with the law director on. Really good point. Like, if this is a single landmark and the landmark's gone, why would we have final say? So we may change the language that it's the Architectural Review Board, or the Architectural Board of Review,
That's
pardon
what we
me.
should.
But I like the concept of the permit has to be issued.
Yes.
Right. So they
Yes.
have to go through all
You
of
said that
Yes,
was-
they have to go through the entire process of having their permit approved as it's like a certificate of appropriateness for demo.
Yes. So the permit for the new construction.
Right.
Yes, yes. And that's pretty standard.
And
You see that.
Is there language, sorry that I'm fully, but around, that it can't be demolished and just left?
Yes, keep going.
It can't be like. what
There's
happened
the
to
pending
center.
landmark demolition and then mandatory stay of demolition. No permit to demolish shall be issued by, I still don't know who the entity is in Cleveland Heights that does it, for 30 days. So it's a 30-day hold.
No, my thing is, I don't want the building to be torn down and then just
Nothing.
be a,
Right, that's what we have to approve.
That's what the
approval
approval,
of the city would.
that's what the approval is, but you can't make, I don't
guess.
think you compel them to build, but you can sure make them get a plan and because it's,
Make them invest.
by the time they spend that money, they're not gonna spend it unless they really are gonna do it. I
Do
mean,
something, yeah.
generally.
Well, I mean, so as an example of a non-landmark property that got torn down, the Center Mayfield property on Mayfield got torn down and mainly so they had to keep taxes on the building.
Right.
I don't want that to go
Yes.
into a land.
Right.
So the city might approve a field.
Right.
So,
But that's, the field isn't a building permit. The demo permit does include typically managing the property, like the land, but that's not a building.
Go back, I believe the states that you're approving,
I'm trying to
Plans
say,
for a-
I don't want to allow demolition if
you're right there,
the
Diane.
approved plan is just a field.
Right, and so I guess that's what we're trying to say. that
No
the
permit
building-
to demolish will be permitted under this paragraph unless the owner obtains final approval from the Landmark Commission and Architecture Review for the building or structure which will replace the property to
Okay.
be demolished. Yeah. I don't think we can do much more than that.
No, I think that's fine. I just didn't want to.
No, that's good. But we are still debating about Landmark Commission and ABR. We're just going to talk to law director
Yeah,
about
that's.
Who's given
the
those
illegal, right?
approval.
Maybe this is the endeavor of the joint meeting.
Yes, this is one of
This
those.
is
Yes.
endeavoring, yes, endeavoring to be at that meeting. Okay.
Okay,
I think we discussed this part, right? Did we do this, Ken?
I
I don't understand what, yeah, we talked about that. This- Yes,
that's what you said the law director.
yes,
Yeah.
that was that question. Okay. Hardship, Maisie, in this section, do we need to include language that the economic hardship is not self-created through deliberate neglect or poor inadequate maintenance? We thought that inspections and the penalties that you have may cover this in Cleveland Heights. Tell me more about
Well, it
this.
sounds like this one property there.
Well, now you may have an example that we need to
Yeah.
think about.
So the
Okay.
inspection is what technically is what building hazard is being inspected. So,
Right.
like, we know about a property that has water coming from the basement, you can see that from just standing in front of it, but they got that sucker sealed on tight.
Yeah,
So,
I don't want demolition by neglect.
But isn't that covered under the, it says,
in the demo,
yeah,
yeah. If you
the
go back
repair,
to-
rehabilitation of the property is not economically feasible and the
There it
property's
is.
condition did not result from damage which has been purposely caused to the property or allowed to occur due to
Yeah.
neglect.
yeah. Okay, that's good.
Okay, good job.
I jumped around. Okay,
That's what
yeah,
we're
okay, we did that one. Trying to keep us moving along here so we don't. Okay, this sounds in line, okay, disagreeing with that. This is just properties language going in. Katie, okay,
And
yes,
the same thing.
okay. So this is one and done. Oh, the thing about the commission may establish written guidelines, I would keep that in there because you have the power to amend and adjust guidelines going forward. So I would keep that in there and not take it out. Diana and I don't want to be seen, we don't give anything up. We're all about.
I know, but I don't want to.
Don't be giving it away here.
My concern is.
Yes, tell me.
That we will be looking at something and there has been a significant change in the way approach that something happens. That is not, we haven't updated it. But there's an issue that's in front, just imagine, there's an issue in front of us. The solution is not reflected in the design guidelines because we haven't updated them in 25 years. But for our ordinance, we're tied to those design guidelines. That's where I'm worried, what I'm worried about.
Well, we added language that says when updating design guidelines, the Landmark Commission shall share and discuss the draft guidelines with the Architectural Board of Review. You have, you could change those guidelines anytime you want.
I'm saying, but
Yeah, what if they
we're
don't?
not going to.
Right.
We just won't.
Right.
Okay.
And then in
now-
25 years, there's going to be something that comes up before us that we all know, in fact, now life has happened and there's this great solution, but it's not in the design guidelines, so then we can't say to the homeowner, you need to do it this way, which is the new wonderful way, but it wasn't. in
Yeah,
your
but
design guidelines.
but I guess I feel that the standards are vague enough that allow you to,
Bigger
allow
things
you
are
to-
happening if,
you are allowed as, that's that economic and technical feasibility.
Right.
So if it's something that's, practiced later, that's not practiced now, because of technical feasibility, you get to still apply the standards and comply. I mean, the standards have been around for 60 years and they still are working pretty well.
But they're pretty vague. The design guidelines are less,
I think it's
So,
25 years,
okay,
so-
right?
Right.
yeah, it's hard to.
I'm just a little worried that we get stuck.
There will probably have to be an update.
In 25 years, Macy, there will be an update.
I'm trying to make
I know.
everybody's life
I know.
better in 25 years.
You might be.
I don't want that, I think it's, the design guidelines are guidelines, they're suggestions.
That's
It's
right,
not
that's right, that's right, that's right.
I just want to make sure that that's,
Yeah, and
language is clear enough that, it doesn't come back to bite us if somebody comes in on an appeal.
oh, I see what you're
And
saying.
it's
Yeah.
not in the guidelines, so therefore we can't.
Did we talk
Deal
about
with
that, the standard, if we got to the standards for review, because I think that's going to answer your question. Yeah.
We want to make a reference to the Department of Interior.
Yeah, okay. So,
Yeah.
yes,
Establish and reference written guidelines, instead of
Sure.
saying you're being held directly to.
okay,
Yes.
reference design guidelines. And I think the next section is going to help if you scroll down.
Before we scroll down, do we want to hit questions?
Oh, was there a question? Okay. This is a hold up. Yeah, this was like, we were asking like, what is this about? And we're just taking it out. It's
We
about
need-
SHPO.
We just have to make sure removing it doesn't cause any issues with SHPO. I am always worried that
Okay.
You know,
Check with SHPO, because we're
Our
going to have,
last
They get to
rewrite-
review this.
Right, and our last rewrite, so I think I don't want it to get lost too, but our last rewrite was specifically so we could go become a CIG. So I don't want to remove language that we put in for whatever reason.
I've never seen that language,
Okay,
but
I just want to make sure.
But, I say that, and SHPO, but they will be reviewing this document,
Okay,
and we'll see that, and I would take it out of there.
I would too, as
Yeah.
long as it's not something.
So you want to scroll down, because there's another one that's related, this one,
Same
especially
thing.
where the commission may undertake additional responsibility on mutual written agreement between SHPO, and I'm like, oh no.
Right, I think that's
No,
great.
They
if
do
we
not
can
have,
remove
they
it.
do not
have
that.
purview over Cleveland Heights.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know where this is coming from, but man, yeah. Okay, so minimum of standards for review. Okay, so Maisie had mentioned in the last meeting quite wisely, why are we not just using the straight up Secretary of Interior standards in here? And when we first did the draft, we had, where we were first doing the draft, we were, we looked at a lot of things, we proposed things. I absolutely agree we should go with the straight up standards. So we pulled out what we had initially proposed and put up the straight Secretary of Interior standards, which also addresses the comment you were just talking about with the design guidelines. Okay, so you've got the design guidelines that extrapolate on the Secretary of Interior standards, right? But there you've got the standards. And I like, the more we thought about it, keeping you very close to National Register criteria, National Register integrity, Secretary of Interior standards. So
It's very defensible.
it's very defensible,
Exactly.
and that's what we're trying to get. And we added case-by-case basis, that's in the design guidelines, but that can't be made clear enough that, because you'll have people come in and they'll say, my neighbor's vinyl sided and they're vinyl sided and they're vinyl sided, and you're like, but, we're looking at your situation and we're trying to, so any comments on that?
My only comment, I think that's great, is when we talk about Secretary of Interior, is it obvious to other people who are not preservation people that we mean the federal government Secretary of the Interior?
I can put the citation in there. We can put the word
Federal language,
citation.
I don't know, just so that it's
Yeah.
super obvious that this is a federal.
We will put the federal citation. We decided not to hyperlink in there because hyperlinks.
No, yeah, don't do
Yeah.
that.
Does this come to the
It gets
National Park
messy.
Service?
Yeah.
So, because that's a name recognition that people
Yes.
grasp easily. Yeah.
I think that's what it's,
Yes.
federal thing. It's not a arbitrary.
Yes.
So
So
we
we
can the Secretary of the Interior.
We took that comment to heart and we're like, yep, you know what? We do need to pull that back. So we just
Because the
put,
design guidelines are there to provide the additional context and
because here's your design guideline page, right? And it just
Yeah, yeah,
flows
it's
like,
perfect.
oh, there they are, we're all
Someone
good.
did a really nice.
Someone did a really good job on those. Okay.
Because I worked one summer graduate for hair,
Oh, yeah.
and so when I told, they say hair, what the hell is that? I said, oh, National Park Service.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we try to explain that, in the guidelines, right? What are
I
these
just
things?
wonder if in here we can throw in.
Do you want a national?
U.S. government, Secretary of Interior.
Or
Parks or
I have
National
no idea.
Park Department.
Put National
We'll
Park
put
Service.
National Park
Well,
Service.
Secretary of the Interior is higher than the National.
Yes.
Right? So it's
Standards through the National Park Service, or do you like the U.S. Secretary?
say United States.
United
Secretary
States.
of the Interiors, whatever their official
Yeah.
title is, the Secretary of the Interior.
You're gonna name drop, okay.
It's
We'll do it.
it is because it helps people understand this is not just an arbitrary city thing.
Right.
This is all across the park.
We're to the appeals section,
So you want to just explain where this come from? And so it keeps saying zoning administrator because we don't know what should
who
be.
your
Right.
entity is.
So, we're saying for appeals, is that council? Is that BZA? Is it planning? Is it landmark? Like, obviously they can't appeal.
I mean, that would be law, right?
But who do they
need to
appeal
tell
to?
us.
And I would like to get feedback from the law director on this. Because if you're going to an appeal, you're in a legal situation, and we really need to, the law director has a lot of experience with your municipality on how these appeals go down, but if the same problem comes up where you appeal to city council, or you appeal to BCA, or you appeal to planning, you've got an entity, I see this over and over again, it's like, we're looking at this, but we don't know what any of these Secretary of Interior standards are, so there's a
Right.
discussion. Do you have any feedback on that? I mean,
Do we have to have city council in there if we're not having city council designate?
No, we just think there needs to be a body and maybe it's APR.
Planning would also be a good planning,
Right.
because they're pretty well versed.
Yeah. So I think it's probably either gonna be planning or APR, but we're just not sure who that.
BZA, Board of Zoning Appeals, is where sometimes we see it go. but they just don't have the background on that.
That would be bad.
And bad things happen, you
Where does
know?
it go in Cleveland? Is that ever happen?
I think that goes straight to the Cuyahoga County Board of Common Pleas, which is another very powerful way to shut down appeals.
I mean, that would be.
You can do, if you're okay with that, I've seen, and that's where I would ask the law director that their next appeal step is they have to spend money, hire a lawyer, and go to the Court of Common Pleas. And that's another thing I've seen communities.
I mean, I
The only thing is though, again, the court they are not qualified
Right.
to review what your concerns are.
And I have heard law directors say, oh my gosh, don't make me go into the Court of Common Pleas and explain why you're trying to block this demolition when somebody wants to build a $500,000 house on the site. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so somebody does decide to take the money
Yeah.
and do that. And that's where we really need to discuss this with the
Something
law
in-house.
director and some guidance on how you.
I would think not BZA, I would think planning department, staff, right, or ABR.
Not maybe.
Maybe
I think to me, this is like a zoning planning.
I mean, it
It's
should
not
come,
architecture.
I guess you would appeal to us, but.
And then what we.
Right, you can't.
When we did this section, we followed your, there's a section in the code about appeals process generally in the city. And I tried to follow that time frame, but again, this is where we need guidance from the law director about really how they would like to see it handled. Fees, so Katie, when you said $150 per infraction, I thought what that meant, Diane and I were talking about it, was you just wanted to charge them $150. And I'm like,
No,
No.
because it
No.
says,
And
and
Diana's
each
like-
day is another
Yeah.
violation.
She's like, no, she wants to hit them
up.
up for $150 for everything they're doing every day,
Yeah.
right? Is what you-
Yeah. So they have
That's
10
what it says, it's
Yeah.
just unclear.
Yeah, so if they have 10
Yeah.
infractions, that's
Yes.
$1,500 a day.
Yes.
And
So the only definition we were looking for is what's an infraction. And again, I would ask the law director about that.
Yeah,
Did you finish addressing my comment?
Oh, yeah, building permit should be capitalized
No, no,
throughout. Oh,
above that, on the
oh, I'm
page.
sorry, Mr.
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry.
I commented on the saying, like a roof should be as close to the original.
oh, that's up on the design standards.
Right.
Yeah, keep going right there, down, right there.
That's it.
I'm sorry. Under replacement of features, this, that replacement of features section did get removed, but this is an important topic. So here's my question to you all. We ran into this in the city of Columbus. The city of Columbus uses a match. They want the repair, whatever, to match. Where the standards want your repair to be compatible. We would recommend compatibility because we feel like you should follow the Secretary of Interior standard. Where this came up in our particular situation is this was a tax credit project that had been approved by SHPO and NPS as compatible. It was a window replacement. It came before the city of Columbus. City of Columbus said, no, we require an exact match. They had proposed like a little bit different window configuration.
It wasn't configured,
Or
but
1/1. And
so
Go
the,
ahead.
Do you mean slate for slate?
right. Yeah.
Columbus requires that.
They actually take the Secretary of Standards and add a whole lot of additional.
You want a very, there was a period there when they put a slate roof on very plain houses. They don't fit well. They could afford.
So compatibility would give you that latitude.
Right.
And that's what the standards and the preservation briefs encourage, is compatible materials. And you get an economic feasibility discussion going on as well when you're talking about slate. And really, when we were talking about that, which was interesting, the city of Columbus was not sympathetic to that.
No, and see, what could have happened was the owner didn't. They wanted to move along. But the owner could have come back with their lawyer and said, so you follow the federal Secretary of Interior standards. And the National Park Service says they've met the standards, and you're saying they don't. But the owner, did not want to have a fight with the city of Columbus. It was something that they were willing to not fight over. But you could have an owner come and say, hey, the National Park Service says I meet the standards, why are you're following the same standards. So that's why I do think sticking to the standards and the language of the standards is the better route, because it
So
just prevents.
compatibility would require there are imitation slate that do look like slate,
Yes.
and there are asphalt that's trying to look like slate. I mean, they're all different levels there.
Another really good example is cedar shingles.
Yeah, cedar shingles.
Cedar shingles are significantly more expensive. They also attract moisture and cause moss buildup. So as much as we all think it's a beautiful product, in Cleveland Heights, which is a tree city, it's a terrible product because of the moisture content. It's a technical, yeah. So you would not want to encourage people to replace cedar shingle roof with cedar
Most
shingle.
people
Right.
don't. A few there.
But if you're saying it's a match, you all are required.
Have to be, yes.
So when I'm looking at your comment, Ken, on that, to me, I'm just trying to look for clarity. It looks like that comment was on previous language that isn't
Correct.
No. There anymore,
No, it's-
because
it's
now we're
removed now.
using, because now we're using the secretary.
Correct, yes. And
So we
under
don't-
those standards, it is compatibility. So Ken was asking about match compatibility, correct? Yeah. And yes, just based on what we've seen, stick to those standards. It makes everything go a lot smoother. I think that was.
Yes.
Okay.
If we use the word compatible there instead, should we have compatible? What's your definition?
I don't think that's a bad idea.
We had
We
it.
started to do it.
We
Yeah.
started to do it, and you know what happened was,
Where are we
I could
using the
not
word though?
find a good definition of compatibility. So I left it to the standards and the preservation rates because it's so broad.
Yes.
It's like when you start to talk about what is compatible related with slate roof, it's like just all these different materials.
Yes.
That's where I stopped.
And then
Maybe you have some thoughts, but I took it out.
That's where my historic research
Well, I have-
discusses compatibility with property.
Yes, and that's why I stayed away from it because the preservation rates are gonna provide you support in a particular situation that comes along, you know, you pull the breeze on windows or aluminum siding or roofs or, and that's why I backed up.
Yeah, because it's almost like, it's not a specialty term, it's a common term.
Yeah, and so we pulled it out, but the way this is written now, you're not requiring a match. That was where we were like, oh, I don't know if we want to go there. So that was a good
There's
discussion.
a lot of things out there.
So we were talking about our old eyeballs, and I missed where we landed on, are we defining compatibility or?
No,
We are not.
Because we just feel it's like,
Well, you
That's
can
Webster's
see in the
job.
last,
Yes, that's someone else's.
in the last draft.
Because the applicant stuff.
Yes. Yeah, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And we went there and I'm like,
We like the wish.
We're-
list.
don't do that.
And that-
So where we go from here is, I think we've really landed in a pretty good spot. I think we're ready for more of a final draft that isn't maybe yellow and green and blue. I will take those out and make it one color, because I think it's easier to read than the markup. We'll keep the markup for the law director who might want to spend the time looking at that. So I think our next thing would be to try to set a meeting date for January. Oh, unless you all have other comments of things
So
we
yes,
didn't
let's,
cover.
does anyone have any additional comments or questions or concerns? And is there a way for us to ask people online? If there is anyone online, if they have questions or comments? or
you have to
concerns?
drag that.
I don't know if anyone's there. Doesn't look like.
Oh, there we
Oh,
are.
the city council, oh, that's us.
I think that's just us, right?
I thought it was.
I actually thought maybe Eric might, like,
council.
Someone was
Have a
in
baby and
left,
watch.
but I think they
Maybe
gave
that
up.
was Eric and he's like, oh, the baby.
Yeah. Okay, so seeing as it doesn't appear that there's anyone online, okay. And we have no members of the public with us today to
Well, never.
So, okay, so we don't have any questions. So we have our next date for us.
So we haven't set a date. It's going to be January.
We have our regularly scheduled meeting, which is,
There's not that much. I mean,
It's gonna get, each time it's gonna
Yeah.
get like,
so we could probably incorporate it unless we have a bigger agenda.
our next step is the law director. So we do need, I think our January meeting, yes, is the law director meeting where we are.
Yes.
Yes, and
Not
I do,
Nada.
not,
This
Okay.
groups,
I think it's,
Oh.
I find it exhausts boards to do a meeting and then try to do this after. It's up to you, I can,
you're saying that the landmark commission has to also meet with the law department?
that's up to you. I mean, we're happy to just meet with the law director.
Correct. I don't think, yeah.
Okay.
I don't
Oh, you
think
want
the
us to
law
go?
department doesn't want to meet with us either,
Okay.
do they?
Okay.
I mean,
And
I would
obviously,
imagine it's a planning commission.
Maybe we could
or
do a
planning
Zoom.
department and you guys.
we could just get
Connect.
comments from, and do a Zoom.
well, because I think we want to hit on, we're going to put together a memo for them and then hit on the areas that we need their input.
And I would think if there's any responses from them that are significant or would alter what we have done substantially, or we have to totally rethink, then we would need to be.
Yes, I agree.
But
Okay.
I would leave it in your hands.
Okay.
To do the law director. So we had put on the schedule January comments and revisions of preliminary draft to SHPO.
Right.
So we probably need to get with the law director before SHPO.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
then we'll get that to SHPO for a final review. And then what do,
And we have a mid-February final presentation to the public of the final draft. So, but I think that probably needs to be a standalone meeting. That you can be our-
stand?
That's on this, that's just for
Oh,
this.
here.
Yeah.
You,
Does the law director deserve a heads up that demolition is the area that was concerned to us here? Or, I mean, rather than, go through every single
Maybe
thing
they won't
and
notice it, and then.
say,
So
I
I
love
think
Macy's approach.
my understanding is they're creating a memo
Yeah,
to go
we're gonna
on
create a
top.
memo.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a
That
memo
will
of,
explain the significant changes that they.
Yeah, and we will
And that would be
state, we've added
included.
these two areas, so we would like you to take a closer look.
so as I'm
And
understanding
here are
this,
the time.
the January meeting is what Diane and I are doing with the law director and
Yes.
not you, right?
Correct.
Just to be all clear.
And then you
Okay.
have a January deadline of sending a.
And then at the end of
preliminary draft to
January, we'll get that drafted, go into SHPO.
Right.
And then probably more towards the end of February, because we got to get back from SHPO
Right.
before we present a
They have
final
passed.
draft.
You know, they've had some change in people.
I'm laughing because I sent a report in August and I got feedback.
Yeah, so I think we probably need to figure out who is actually doing this.
So we're gonna ask for 30 days and it's a CLG grant. So
Right,
we're
so
gonna
right,
talk
so
about the
maybe
fact
that'll-
it's a grant
Yes,
and we're going to be,
they have to file.
I would say on average, there's not a lot of critique from SHPO.
there's not gonna be a lot
Oh, I
of
can't
this. They don't. So we need to get a February public meeting date on the calendar because there's notice requirements, right, Brooke, that you all want to make
So
sure.
we have are we trying to put that date tonight, Brooke, or
No.
why don't we put that on our agenda for our regular January meeting? To come up with some potential dates. So at our regular
And
January
please,
3rd.
late in February because of the SHPO and getting everything back. And then,
No, late February.
I think I said February.
Yeah, late in February.
Late February. Okay, I just want to keep on schedule here,
Yeah.
so we keep everything moving along. And then, there's another round to SHPO to end.
Right, but that late February meeting is this commission's next.
Is there another round of SHPO if we don't make changes post the SHPO review?
I think not, they asked for a January review. And then they asked for a final, this was just based on the RFP.
Right,
So,
but if there are no
Yeah,
changes
I don't
after
know
the
if the
SHPO, then
grant-
you don't need to get SHPO to look at it.
I don't know if the grant requires 2 reviews.
Yeah, per your original project schedule, it's just that the final revisions are
Going
going
on to
them.
SHPO, it's not for them to
Oh,
review
on
it,
to
it's a
SHPO.
submittal.
Sending it out, not.
We're not,
Okay. All right. Great.
Okay, so that's good. So for us, Landmark Commission, we meet January 3rd, for a regular meeting. At that meeting, we will talk about a date and maybe come up with a couple that
Yes.
Work with them.
That piece of paper was looked at.
Okay, that's
Now,
good. Now, in between, will you keep us up to date with your conversation from the law director? Because I imagine if there are substantial issues coming back.
Yes,
then
that may
we will-
change.
We are gonna have to have another meeting. We're gonna have to have another.
Yeah.
We can all think through what's the right.
right. Okay.
so we'll try to get that early in the year.
All right. Thank you all. You're great to work with.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. And we're getting there.
We're getting there.
All right.
So like,
Yeah.